Alrighty, everyone. Thank you for coming to our presentation. Today, we're going to be covering the topics of letters of recommendation and cover letters. My name is Anne Michelle Sotelo, and we're here with GIP, which stands for Graduate Information Program with the Office of EOP. Thank you all for coming. Today, I'm going to have co-hosting. My coworker is going to be helping me co-host, and she's going to be helping us with logistics.
So, hello everybody, my name is Esmeralda. I'm just helping with logistics and stuff.
Alrighty, with that done, let's start. I'm gonna divide this presentation into little sections with a little break in between for questions. Make sure to reserve your questions for that little intermission or just drop in the box chat and we'll have it. We will have time to cover all your questions at the end. So just make sure to do that and thank you very much. Letters of recommendations will go first. Okay, what do you need for letters of recommendations? What do you need to know? What do you need to do? Those are really important questions to be asking yourself when you start thinking of, requesting them from your professors, employers, or staff that you might want a recommendation from. You need to show the institution that you can work well with other fellows, and that is why institutions like grad school, law school, and med school really push for those letters of recommendations. It's another way for them to know who you are, how you work, um, how is your style of working, who you've been working with, how you interact with others, and just a little bit more about your work ethics in general. The letters of recommendation gives more holistic view on your graduate application because of those little aspects that I mentioned before, the little trace of your not characteristics of your character per se, but your work ethic in general. Make sure you give your recommender access to some other components of your applications and make sure you hit on those points before you actually ask for them. Like you have to have some sort of reading material ready for them when you're asking for the letters of recommendations, because as much as you think that person might know you, remember that they have like 200 plus students, 50 students in one classroom. They have multiple class a day. There's multiple courses within the year, and they've been teaching for many years. So you're definitely not the first face with that name. And it's good for them to have a little bit more further reference when it comes to you. How to ask for a letter of recommendations. Choose your recommender really wisely, because something that I really like to tell students is that a bad letter of recommendation will hurt you more than help you. Sometimes no letter is better than a bad letter. Um, Make sure that person knows you in a personal level, or at least a really academic deep level. Make sure that person that you've been working with, or if it's a professor that you have a good relationship and good grade with, because it is really important that that person really knows your work ethics and it's able to like assess your character and your work ethics, so he can write a successful letter for you. When it comes to professors, they're really busy persons. They're doing research, they're doing classes, and they also human, so they have a personal life outside of the classroom, believe it or not. So you need to give them time. You need to give them at least a month prior. You need to ask them with a lot of consideration, and again, you need to give them something to read when it comes to um, your request, because like I said before, you're a face among 100 students, so you really, even if you think you really know them, it's better if you give them something to read, so they're more aware of your personal circumstances, situations, and the way you've been brought up in, so they can assess your work more thoroughly. Make a connections with them personally. Again, if no connection has been made, go to their office hours. It's a great way to start that conversation. That is a great way to start those relationships. And the question always lies: and what should I talk about? How can I make that connection? I'm a really shy person. I'm an introverted person. Talking doesn't come easily to me. So how can I make that connection? How can I truly get to know my professor without being awkward or weird about it? Well, I point out a little bit of a little pointers for y'all, so you have more of like a point of reference to start. Talk about what you like, what your biggest interest, your takeaways from the class, something that they mentioned, something that you found interesting, perhaps their research your professors. They're usually doing big stuff, publishing, writing, doing incredible amazing things. We have in this institution a lot of great minds and faces, so just make sure you do your research when it comes to them, so they know that you're interest in them is personal and not just general, meaning that you're rushing just to get one done. So you're asking whoever. and just talk about your future, your aspirations. Who knows? They might even have a few pointers, people that can help you, and they might even like you better because you're actually engaging through conversation and wanting to get to know them as well as develop yourself. As for a letter of recommendation in person, I know that right now, in time of COVID, this might seem like a little bit on the impossible side. It is on the in-person sense, but a Zoom call will be better than an email if you don't know this professor, just because they don't know your face. Ask them after you had a full conversation and engaging with their actual components of their class, their presentation, if they're just like a visitor, or if it's your boss, make sure that you have an actual relationship, not necessarily outside of work, but that you actually have engaged in a more substantive conversation there rather than just your task alone. You can ask them in more ways than another, like, do you feel that you know me well enough to write a recommendation letter? This question is really important because they will be honest. This is not the first time they have to do it. It's not You're not the first student to ask. And asking those little questions of like, do you think you could do it? Are you comfortable writing a letter of recommendation for me? Can I ask you for one? Is really important. It shows that you're not only mindful of their time, their presence, and their personal life, but also that you have the consideration to actually ask and not demand. Asking for a letter of recommendation through email. This might seem like the most feasible way of asking in times of COVID because we don't have that office hours in person as we are used to. So you can apply this into a personal request. I have a little format that you can use that I will introduce later. This for some people that you can meet them in person as the circumstances don't allow right now. We understand they understand that you're busy, perhaps you don't know them that well, so a Zoom call wouldn't make you comfortable. Excuse me. There is many reasons why you wouldn't want to just engage into a Zoom conversation or a face-to-face kind of thing, although the circumstance won't allow as much of an in-person situation, but more of a personal connection, like a phone call or something like that. So make sure that your email resembles a personal conversation that you can actually engage and develop later. Okay, step one, I'm gonna give you a little bit of tips and pointers so you can have that successful email or successful conversation. Like I said, this little format can translate into a Zoom call. So if you wanna take notes, I would highly recommend. Find out whether your professor is fine with your first name basis. Don't just assume that because you talked to them one time in spring quarter, you can just address them by their name. Some professors don't like that and they might find it disrespectful. The subject line of your recommender should include your name, of course, and then recommendation for, because you do want to give them the subject of your request of your email, just to give them a reference on what is it that you're asking them for. So it would be your name, year in school, so they know your standing, your kind of not priority level, but the level of urgency. Like if you're a senior asking for a recommendation, that might wait a little bit more than a sophomore asking for a letter of recommendation, just because of the time basis. Like you are literally about to leave versus a person that has 2 years. Your major, so they know and what department you're from. Some teachers do teach for multiple departments at a time. So just so they have that reference, course you took with the professor, plus the grade. You might even want to include a little bit like, oh, you said this about my paper and that encouraged me to keep working on this topic, on this subject, to go further. And they might even take an interest in your work, and who knows, they may even mentor you further. And really important, why do you need the recommendation? What are you applying to? Are you applying to med school, to grad school, to law school, to a teaching credential program, to a overseas program, an internship, anything like that? You should tell them in this little section of the email, or the conversation itself, like this, just little pointers where you should start, where you should navigate, and when is it due. Like I said, you should give them time because they are human beings living their own lives, having their own preoccupations and stresses. So you give them at least a month and be checking in on them politely. Step 2. Why do you ask them specifically? Like I mentioned before, you don't want to have a genetic reference when it comes to your letters of recommendation. You don't want something short and detached because, like I said, a bad letter will hurt you more than help you. Explain your drive as for asking them for a letter of recommendation. Explain why you're interested in the program, internship, job, grad school, anything that you are asking for, like what you need it for. And don't say anything trivial like, oh, it's for my resume, because they will not take you into consideration, or they might just not want to do it because it's too generic. And state something within the program that interests you specifically. Maybe draw something from their personal interest. Like, let's say that they're writing a book on diversity, and this program is, a program that would help communities of color in their work countries and blah blah blah. Like, just draw some connection. Make sure that that faculty has some sort of relevance to the field of work that you're actually applying that reference to, and make sure that they cannot influence your work in a way. Like, if they're from your legal studies department, you're applying to law school, how did their class impact your decision? How did they impact um, you? How are they the person that are like the indicated ones to actually write for you? How are they special in a way that will matter to you if they are the ones to write for you? Just make them feel special. Everybody wants to be chosen, and that professor probably gets many requests, but if you really make them feel like him is the one you chose for a specific reason, they're more likely to be willing to write one, because they know how much it matters to you. Hand in what you want to your professor to say about you. Like I said, give them something to read. Be like, this is not to say to give them a pity story, because they probably don't want that. But hey, if you're like a single mother working 2 jobs and going to school, and therefore you gotta be in the class, tell them that. They want to know why you didn't do as well, or why you did do great, and they want to know you. They want to know why you are the student that you are. So give them something to read about. Give them a little backstory as to why are you the student you are and what is driving you forward. And follow up. Like I said, give them like a month of reference. Give them like even more if you can. And always state that you're following up with the date that you really wanted by, and then send a thank you note afterwards. Make them feel like they really, make an impact on your application. They don't want to feel like you just use them kind of for the situation. So make sure you be mindful, you be kind, you be patient, and you are truly, truly grateful, because they are taking time out of their day. They're not being paid to write recommendation letters. Most of them, the majority of them, are only paid to do research and teach. So they are taking time outside of their work hours to write this letter for you. So make sure you're grateful and just be nice and kind. Remind them by thanking them, like I said. Be kind. We're all humans. It's COVID. We have no time. We are stressed. It is a really crucial time where we just don't have the time. We don't have the energy, but life is still passing by, and you need them, but they also need to be reminded that you are being grateful for their time and energy, because they're not being paid for this. They're doing it out of their kindness of their heart, whether you believe it or not. And plans of gap year. This is a really crucial question that a lot of people ask. Do I ask for my letter of recommendation now, even if I'm doing a gap year, or do I just wait and do it later? I would say ask for your professor to write you your recommendation letters before the school year ends, because like I said, you are 1 in 100. And not to say that you're special, I'm just saying you're literally 1 in 100 student that they will have, so they will forget your face or your name, or just, you. Nothing personal, don't get hurt. They just have a lot of students that they engage with every single day. So make sure that while you have that connection, you write the request those recommendation letters, even if you're not going to use them right away, because they might forget you. And the quality of the recommendation letter you can get now versus 2 years from now will be different. So make sure you ask them while the time is still relevant. And if you do not do that, and if you do leave and graduate, and then 2 years later you need a recommendation letter from that professor, make sure you save some of your work so you can attach it to like the something to read about you, so they can remember you and they can see your work again and be reminded of what kind of student you are. That might help. But again, I highly recommend you ask before you leave. Okay, this is the little gap session. We take a breather. We kind of like, decompress a little bit, and time for y'all to ask for questions. We will be stopping the recording for just a second so and your questions are confidential in case you don't feel comfortable asking them out loud. That is totally fine. And just make sure that you drop them in the box if that's what you're comfortable. And yeah, just a little break from our presentation to answer all the questions you might have. Done with our break, we can continue with the cover letters. Cover letters is another aspect that a lot of people get confused about because they don't know how to approach the subject or how to write one. Letters are not a popular thing anymore with social media, emails, and etc. So how do we construct one? How do we approach it, and how do we write one? How to start. Entry cover letter. Cover letters follow different sets of formats. They look different. They're a little bit like resumes in the way that you kind of have to customize them and cater to the specific situation that you're in. But just, a general sense of how they usually goes is first on the top, on the center, or on the side, there's different formats that I included in this little example page, which some people included as a header, on the top, and then you just restate it at the bottom, which it helps because you do want to concise it and format it in a way that it looks like a letter, because it is your like cover letter that usually goes on top of your resume when it comes to applications to like many different things like jobs and internships and many even grad schools. So your legal name, not to mention that you cannot include your pronouns. It's not as popular, but now it's, getting motion. So you can include your pronouns underneath your name. It is your professional email. School one is fine if that's the one you use. Make sure you'll be able to access it before, after you leave. You don't want them to email an account that is no longer valid. And then your phone number. Another thing that I would like to mention that in this little format they included, but I highly recommend you not to, is that do not include your address. I would like to say that we live in a really fair, equal society where racism, gerrymandering, and a lot of other biases do not exist. However, if I told you that, I would be lying because there is those biases in the workforce even today. So do not include your address because many employers will, look at your address and see where you come from and be like, well, that little, zip code is, gang zoned or the hood or just not an area of a person that I would like in my company. That's just not the image I want. But then again, you are not your zip code. You are not where you live, and you can bring a lot to the table. However, those biases do exist. So I would say do not include your address because you don't want any bias to play a part in the decision process when you're applying to something. Also, you don't want to give them your address. You don't want any creepy stalkers. So just don't give them your address. It's just, it's a safe bet. Just don't give them your address. Okay. Another thing, addressing your employer. Make sure you do your research. This is really, really important. I cannot stress this enough. You always want to address hiring manager, hiring committee. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it, but you know what I mean. You always want to address who you are, interviewing with. Because it sounds polite, it sounds like you do your research, and you do just show that you're more knowledgeable and that you actually are interested in the position. So make sure you do your research and that you include the name or hire manager or to who this is concerned to in the hiring committee. Make sure you address the person or the department that you are applying to. Body of your letter. Okay, this is really important. I cannot tell you what to write in this one because it's really, really personal. And like I said, you need to cater it to different situations, spaces, and platforms. But I will tell you and will give you some pointers that you should really, really keep in mind when writing one. These 5 questions will guide you, will help you, and will provide a little bit more structure to any cover letter that you will write in the future. First of all, why do you want to work there? The most redundant, repetitive question that you will ever encounter in the workforce. Why do you want to work there? And no, my friends, you cannot put because you're broke and you need a job. I'm sorry, but that won't fly in any workspace, internship, or anything like that. Trust me, I tried. The point here is that you need to actually specify why do you want to work in that workplace, not just because you need a job, but because it will build on your ability to do something. It will make you a better employee in the future because you want to develop a skill, because you see the mission, the ethos, the statement of the company, and you really believe in the greatness of its potential, and you would like to be part of that change, of that initiative, of that um, of that company essentially. Like you need to kind of flatter them a little and be like, hey, you're great. That's why I want to work for you. Like there's nobody like you, homie. So let's do it. You really need to make them feel like you actually are interested in that job that is special for you in a certain form, way, or shape, or whatever you want to put it as. You need to do your research when it comes to this. What are you bringing to the table? Again, why are you the, unicorn special individual that they should hire? Why are you unique? Question three, what makes you unique? There's going to be a lot of applicants, not only for grad school, but also internships and workforce. So you need to always make sure you tell them, this is what I bring and this is how I'm unique. It sounds a little redundant. It sounds a little like two the same, like it's almost the same question, but it's really not. One, you bring your skills, and one, how do you work with those skills? How do you develop those skills? How do those skills make you a better applicant? So you kind of name the skills that you have, and then how do you acquire them? How do you develop them? How do you work with those skills to make you you? And then what drives you? Motivation, goals, aspirations. What is it that, I want to be a lawyer. Well, why do you want to be a lawyer? Oh, I want to be a doctor. Why do you want to be a doctor? This is where you put like your little heart into the letter and be like, this is why I want to work here. Not because you need money, but because you want something greater. What is your purpose? What is driving you? And then five, how would you take advantage of being in such environment? How would the company not only serve, like you already told them how you would serve the company, now you have to tell them how the company would serve you, help you grow, how can it help you develop, how can it make you into a better person so that better person can better help them. It's like this little circle. You tell them you're good, and then you tell them how you helping them, how did the company help you so you can better help them. It's a little cycle that you should follow, and trust me, it will make your little letter shine. Because then you're following everything that they will most likely be asking you when it comes to character and attitude toward the job. And lastly, closing your letter. Easiest part of the letter so far, at least I hope so. Make sure you close your letter with a kind of respectful tone, and as well as any formal letter, you can use words such as sincerely, with high regards, respectfully, and then your legal name. Again, don't use your nicknames or anything of that nature. Make sure you use your legal name because if it's a job, grad school, whatever, they will be checking your legal documents anyways. So yeah, closing your letter should be easy, but make sure you're always kind and respectful. And if you want to address like, oh, and I thank you for your time, you can do that, but make sure you always address them kindly and respectfully at the end. I know I just went by to a lot of information, just kind of ran it through. So if you guys have any questions, again, I'm here to answer them. And this is the end of our presentation. So thank you very much for joining us. Again, I do appreciate your time. And yeah, I will leave the contact information here and I'm ready to ask any questions. Thank you very much. We will be ending the recording here though. Thank you so much.